All right, I will call to order the meeting of Finance and Judicial agenda. Roll call, please.
Scott McClory.
Here.
Ken Minell.
Here.
Tim Sharota.
Here. All right, our next item is the preliminary review of the proposed 2023 Capital Improvement Plan, also known as the CIP, and you have a enclosure that was kind enough to be provided for us, so whoever wants to hit the highlights, go ahead.
Well, I guess I was going to have a quick highlight, and then I was going to turn it over to Corey. So Corey, you're on the hook. But yeah, I mean, just real basically, just wanted to just sort of identify that for the CIP this year, we tried to incorporate all of our projects from all departments. So I know in years past, you typically just see more. Usually, the list just says vehicles and streets, and there's usually not a lot else in it. But this year, we wanted to try and have it all in one spot. So you'll see there's a lot of water sewer projects that got added, as well as one item for police and one item for recreation and one item for electric department as well. So they're all on there, and the big focus, generally speaking, is streets, water, and sewer, which probably isn't a big surprise. We know DPW is a big spender, and just a little joke to Matt. But the big Centralia project is going to be the biggest cost for 23, 24, and 25, which we'll cover more in a minute. And then, not surprisingly, water has obviously been a big focus. So with the Northeastern water treatment project and the Lakeland upgrades, we're going to have kind of a lot of water costs over the next couple of years. Hopefully that doesn't continue for long, but and so they're going to be really front loaded the next couple of years. And our intent when we put together the CIP is we do want to use as much of the state's safe drinking water revolving loan funds as we can. Obviously, lower interest costs. We don't have to pay issuance costs for bonding. So anything that we can get eligible, we're going to do. We'll be filing an intent to apply for that funding here by the end of October. So at least for the next year or two. And with that, I don't know, Corey, do you want to just summarize what we're looking for in 23 and
I think with the two handouts, the one is a 5-year plan. The page behind it, we have the funding, how we're going to fund the 2023. So that's our plan as of now. We're hoping to get, like you said, safe drinking water loan to get involved to be able to fund some of that through that safe drinking water loan for hopefully lower interest. We will be having Ellers at the Tuesday meeting that will be able to go through this and kind of give us what that means going forward as far as the payments and what that will do potentially to the mill rate, and that part of it we don't have yet. What else? We did kind of push some things over to the capital improvement plan and to be financed based on while we were going through the budget and needing to have funds available in the general levy. So we were financing, we kind of pushed some things over to the finance side to make sure we are able to do the project. So I know how the actual budget lays out, we may be able to fund some of that, or we may not be able to fund that with the levy rather than financing it. That's pretty much all I have for the CIP.
Well, we could just kind of go down the list briefly. We have $862,000 in vehicle replacement costs for next year. And if you want to see a breakdown as to what those vehicles are, you'll see further in the packet there's a list of $55,000 for a police interceptor utility, $41,000 for an Impala, $4,000 for some equipment that will go in those vehicles. So there's basically $102,000 for the police department.
This one.
Okay. So $102,000 for the police department. Fire department, we've got budgeted $250,000 for a tanker. You'll see that there's public works. We've got the $400,000 budgeted for the $410,000 for the leaf vac vehicle. And that is pretty much it for vehicles for 2023. So just a couple big ticket items between the fire and the leaf vac, and then like I said, a couple police vehicles. So
Does that $250,000 for the fire department is that just our share, or
That's the
will that
total.
number be reduced because of the
That will be
townships?
reduced, yeah, if you look at the funding, the single page one, there's based on what our percentage is right now, 111,250 would be,
Our share.
paid back to
Oh,
us
okay.
as funding towards that, so the rest is ours. So it's like 55.5% of that is ours.
Yeah, we tried to list at the top of the CIP plan, the very first document we gave you. At the top is the funding sources, so, you'll see debt listed up there. Intergovernmental reimbursements, which that's the reimbursements we get from the towns for both police, or for fire and EMS services. And then, obviously, contributions from electric, water, sewer. We've got a grant listed on there, ARPA funds, and then hopefully the safe drinking water loans. So those are the revenue sources we have. But, so we've got about, do you have a?
I just wanted, I know that I see, right now it is still scheduled for 24, that radio transition that we were talking about, that public safety, that Walter County was just here for that tower that they're putting up behind their facility. So there's that larger, overall radio project for the county. So that's why you'll see that 126,000 in 2024, Adam, for me, and your vehicle replacement schedule is
Gotcha,
actually
yeah.
right now. I don't know, I didn't see anything for Rod. I know we just met with the provider last week, and still is, the plan is still to kind of go live 23, 24, somewhere in there, but I think Rod's gonna have those costs as well. I'm not sure if Matt's planning on
His says
jumping-
150 on 24.
Are you planning on jumping on board on the radio project at all, so that you can
No,
have those
I wasn't.
opportunities?
No.
Okay. Just what, so you're aware of that?
Yeah, it's on the second page for.
Okay. Okay.
That's still 2024 though, right?
Possibly 23, 24, yeah, most likely 24.
And those would go in the actual vehicles, or?
And they're gonna be actually mobile and portable, those,
Okay.
that's, at least for us it is, I believe Rod did this thing.
So then moving on to, so that's what we got for the vehicles. For the police department, we've got 150,000 budgeted for the city's share of replacing the elevator over at the county building. We're paying 1/3 of that cost. Under street reconstruction, and I'll defer to Matt in a second on this, but we've got 100,000 budgeted just for general street maintenance. That we've got 429 for the Market Street project, which, that's the one where we're just paying for the design fees and the state's picking up the rest. East Centralia, that's the big project. That one, I think we've got the design. You'll see the first number on there, the 281,830. That's the design cost for, and I should back up and say, we're looking at, for Centralia, it's going to be a 3-phase project, which I apologize if you guys already know this, but I don't know how much how much you discussed this last year or the years before, but Centralia is going to be like a 3-phase project. And so we're doing the design work for the first phase starting this fall and early next year. And then we ideally be putting the project out for bid next year, and actual construction would be next year. So you'll see at the top of the second page, that first segment would be from I-43 to Lincoln, be phase 1, which has an estimated cost of $3 million. And then at the top of the first page you're just looking at, or I should say at the bottom of the first page, we have the design costs for the second phase, which we would incur next year in the fall. So one of the things that the city would like to do is to be a little bit more proactive in terms of doing the design work in April, May, June of the year before you want to do the project, so the project's ready to go out for bid in between November and January. And then you're going to get a better bid price, and so you can start the project then the following year. So we're trying to get there, but that's why that you'll see some design costs budgeted for next year for this phase 2 of Centralia, and then also the full anticipated contract costs budgeted for next year as well for phase 1 of Centralia. And then Matt, I don't know if there's anything you want to talk about with Centralia, or?
No, I think what Adam mentioned is important, though. We haven't really done that in the past, as far as budgeting for next year's projects this year, so that we can start the design phase a little bit earlier. It allows other utilities to relocate their facilities in a timely manner. If we can get it on the streets earlier, let them know about our projects. A lot of times you'll see on some larger scale projects like East Centralia, I'm sure the water main, everybody's going to want to update their facilities because it's just an older corridor. So that would allow them to do that in advance of our work. We often run into problems where we're out there working at the same time they are, and it causes contractors to point the finger and say they caused the delay, and it just makes it easier. So
that's kind of what we're looking for Centralia, and then we do have $200,000 budget under streets for Wright Street, and this is one that's actually going to be a combo project between there's a need to replace the water lines in that area because of lead, and coincidentally enough, I don't know if anybody's driven on Wright Street recently, but it's in pretty rough shape. So it's right by the school. So we're looking to kind of knock out two birds with one stone by doing that project next year. So we've got $200,000 budgeted for the street side, and then you'll see below there's $300,000 budgeted for the actual cost of the water portion of that project. So we did just recently get the engineering cost estimates, which we haven't plugged in on that number yet, so it'd actually be higher than the $500,000. It's going to be more than that once you factor in engineering, but that's kind of what we're looking at doing for next year for streets. I don't know if there's any questions about those two, or?
The only question I have, and I just need someone, I guess, to refresh my memory, why is Westward Drive projecting to be damn near as much as East Centralia? $2 million to do one road?
there was a series of roads that we had included in there. It wasn't just Westward, but
Okay,
it must
because I
have
just
got.
see one road of $2 million, I'm like,
Yeah,
that seems way out the mark.
I think that was a carryover from last year, but there was a few roads that were included. with that.
Okay, but Westward is the main one, but there are others?
Yep.
Okay, fair
Yeah.
enough, that's good. I just thought, unless we're making it out of gold bricks or something, I don't see how it could be as much as East Centralia, because I know that's a hell of a lot bigger piece of road.
Yeah, I just want to mention for Wright too that it wasn't laid out last year in our 5-year plan, but it's driven by lead services that are in that area. So in order to meet that 5% or 10% criteria that the DNR is mandating, that's Wright Street was pulled forth because you'd end up with a street that was all dug up and you'd have hardly anything left anyways. So and it needs it. It definitely needs it, and it's used heavily by school buses and. So.
Okay. You guys have any other questions about CIP? Anyone? All right.
I was just gonna.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, as far as the streets go, you'll see we've got budgeted basically in 25 to finish that third phase of Centralia, and then as you just alluded to, Alderman McClory about Westward Drive. So those are the street portions. For water and sewer, you're probably not going to be, like I said, not too surprised with the northeastern. As far as for water and sewer, the biggest projects are going to be the northeastern water treatment plant upgrades and the Lakeland rehab. There is going to be a sewer component to the northeastern project because you got to do that sewer main extension in order to allow the water treatment plant to be able to operate. So thankfully, the state has said that they're going to allow us to use the safe drinking water fund to actually cover the sewer portion of the project. It's because it's part of one big northeastern treatment plant project, so that should be helpful. But in terms of our own internal purposes, we've separated out. There's going to be the sewer costs, and then there's going to be the actual water costs. So, and I think that's pretty much it. I mean, you'll see in terms of the water sewer sections, we've identified what their portions of those road costs would be in terms of to replace the lines as part of the Centralia project and the other street projects we talked about. The Park and Rec is looking for $25,000 next year to install some cameras at Bateman Park due to some public safety graffiti issues they've had out there. And the electric department wants to start doing a LED replacement project in the next year or two. Dawn, maybe you want to add to that? Or?
No, we're just gonna try to do half in '23 and half in '24.
So, and then the last thing is, you can see on that recreation parks section, they're looking to remodel the recreation office. What that really means is they're trying to be able to, I guess, get, I think Rachel, no, Sammy.
supervisor.
Yeah, trying to get Sammy into the same office suite that everybody else is in over there. So it's not, when you hear remodel, it's not like they're looking to just spruce up there. It has to do with trying to, I guess, get everybody in the same area, so.
They're gonna like bust out a wall or something?
I think something with the closet.
There's a storage area in back, I think that they were going to occupy and then do an office space, I think. So.
All right. Anything else about CIP? Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns about CIP? All right, we'll move on to the preliminary review of the proposed 2023 budget. And again, you have a closure and some bullet points there, so whoever wants to take that on. The self-explanatory. If you're going to read it to me, I can read myself. Don't do it.
I won't then, I won't read it line for line, I guess. I just say in summary, because of our net new construction of 0.42%, which is definitely the lowest we've had in 5 or 6 years, that's certainly putting a limitation on our levy, for what we can increase it for next year. Now, sort of a good news, bad news situation is we're actually going to get, the state will send out the levy limit worksheet, and we just found out yesterday we're actually going to get it tomorrow. So that will be helpful because then we can know for absolute certain what that levy limit increase can be. So right now we've sort of estimated, and that's on that spreadsheet. Let's see here, we got that very last page. At the very, very top is kind of a,
Too many pages.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
at the very, very top, and it's this one.
Well, it's easy for you guys because you know what you're talking about. For the rest of us, we're like thumbing through trying to
Yeah.
figure out. So, you know what might be helpful in the future, and this sounds silly, but
Number it.
I was just going to say, can you say like turn to
Yep.
page 6?
Yep.
You know, that
Sure.
for those that are mathematically challenged, or okay.
Yep, no, definitely number it. At the top is kind of a summary, which we'll go into in a minute, but, so right now, we've prepared a budget. The budget we prepared is based off of only increasing last year's levy amounts by 0.42%. There's a chance that our levy could be increased even further. It's kind of complicated because the budget worksheet, the levy worksheet that the state sends out, I'm just gonna be honest, is super complicated. And in the past, they've had the city move around some debt numbers and all that kind of stuff. So we think that there's a chance that our levy limit actually may be maybe higher next year than we're anticipating, but we've budgeted conservatively and we're sort of anticipating worst case scenario, okay? So.
And the letter that you're expecting from the DOR this week, it actually could work out in our favor. This is the most conservative way we're going.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And again, I'll have Corey explain this in a second, but on the right side of that top page where you see possible levy limit column,
Thank you. I'm glad you're sitting next to me.
right here is on the far side when you see the, you'll see a number, it says 7,851,712. That's what Corey's calculated, thinking what the levy might actually be, that we can increase it to. But you'll see that to the left of that, for our purposes, we're estimating, okay, just only increasing the levy amount by 0.42% from 2022. So that's just like preliminary information. In terms of just overview, really the biggest challenges we've had budgeting for next year, obviously besides the levy limit limitation, has been healthcare costs. Our medical claims for our self-funded plan are really high. I mean, they've doubled basically since in the last 2 years. So they were about $900,000 in 19 to 20, and then they went up to 1.2 million, and then this most recent year, which ended in July 1, they were up to 1.7 million. So to go from 900,000 to 1.7 million, almost 1.8 million, in basically 2 cycles, that's been a huge challenge for us in terms of covering those claims. So
Has it been some unique circumstances where 2 or 3 bad illnesses, or has it been across the board?
Adding the full-time fire department was a huge one. And then I would say higher claims and more people.
So way more people.
more people, and then,
How many was the fire department? That had to be huge, huh?
well, you're adding,
Well, and it's families,
yeah.
And
more
yeah.
families than
But I
single
mean,
plans.
That had to be a huge.
And within those numbers, yes, obviously the fire department's been a big part of that. And then also, according to Consociate, they tell us that it's also because we've had more just high claims. Like typically, they said you might have 2 high claims, and the last year we had 6 or 7 claims that were on the high side that exceeded our
I can't think of the word.
reinsurance level. So, and unfortunately, we haven't seen, at least through the first 2 months of this new cycle, which has been July and then August, we haven't seen a decrease in those claims versus the year before. So we're not seeing it doesn't look like, okay, we're gonna do better than last year necessarily. Now, I will say the one caveat to that is there was a really, really high spike in June of this past year. I mean, we're talking like several $100,000 all in 1 month. That was an anomaly. If you look at that versus all the prior years, they didn't have that big of a spike in June, so we don't know, if we don't have another June like we had last year, that we might actually, do better, but,
Yeah, I know in years past, we've talked about this, and it's so difficult because you just, this, like, I want to say like 5 years ago, we had like an unbelievable year. Everybody had like a sniffle and that was it. Do you remember? Like 4 or 5 years ago? I don't know, some of you weren't around. But then like 2 years later, we had, I'm just spitballing here, like a guy that was in the Swiss Alps and fell off a cliff and had to be flown to Germany, and it cost us like $1 million for that one claim. It was just crazy. So I mean, you never know, you can't really like predict, what's going to happen to a family member or whatever. So, and it never, to me, it never goes down. I mean, nothing. The odds of us, you coming back to us at this point next year and saying, hey, guess what? September, October, November, we're perfect in 2023 and we're back to square. No, we're not going to be. I mean, it's just going to continue to escalate. So,
and that's why for budgeting for this year, we didn't want to, we didn't want to sort of bank on some miraculous reduction in healthcare claims. So we're actually budgeting for another $150,000, $60,000 worth of potential claims because, we're looking at the numbers they gave us to estimate off of, and we're sort of hoping for the worst, well, not hoping, planning for the worst, hoping for the best, I guess you could say.
right.
So really the medical side's been a big challenge. The other challenges are just wage costs, and wage, WRS, they're increasing our contribution rate, so that's a challenge. Insurance costs for, other insurance, like workers' comp costs and just general insurance costs are high. So, if you look at, particularly, police, fire, and EMS right now, the 3 biggest increases we've had for departments. And I will say, to the credit of DPW, at least in our budget, for next year, they're actually pretty level. The increase you see on the sheet is actually just because we transferred, in our budget, we typically will allocate the medical claims, a proportion of our medical claims that we're paying to each department. DPW didn't have the share in there, so they were just kind of bundled with everybody else. So basically, Corey just moved it from one line to the other. So the increase you see for next year is largely just taking the medical claims that were in the sort of big pot and putting it in the DPW. So the increase you see for DPW is not actually really an increase. And then I listed a couple other departments just so you can kind of see what's going on. So really those are just the biggest changes, healthcare, and then just some of the insurance costs are really what's driving our budgeting challenges. And the fact that we can't raise the levy by a lot.
On the 2023 worksheet with prior years page, the general fund in the library if I'm reading this correct, there in red are showing a shortage of over 100,000 for 2022. Am I reading that right?
That should say actually
Oh,
2023.
Yeah,
Okay. That's projected?
yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, if we're short 100 grand already, that's 2020.
Those are the headings from down below. In order to get it to come on the other sheets, I had to stick it up the top. Sorry.
And Corey, do you want to maybe just summarize the top a little bit?
So the shortage excess column on that same page there, we were using the estimated levy on the, to the left of those numbers are basically just adding the 0.42% on from the prior year's budget amount. So we're short in the general fund by almost 100,000. However, the EMS wages and the total has gone down as far as what we need for the levy because of the increased revenues that we've been getting from the actual EMS side. So that reduced down what we need out of the levy to cover the EMS side. So in turn, the fire side is kind of increased because of wages and claims and insurance side of that. So basically that's kind of being, will be transferred, that levy amount will be transferred over to the general fund. So in all, if you look at the bottom line, we're at around 34,000 in the black, which is good.
Where's that
It's
number
just
at?
redistributing right below the red ones here, right?
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So the shortage will be covered by the fact that the EMS has gone down, which kind of attributes from the revenues. And
So philosophically, if EMS was at full staffing, we wouldn't have that luxury of the 34,317.
well, that the budget amount is estimating at full staffing. That 150,000 is because our revenues have been going up for EMS.
Oh, because they've been used so
They've been-
much.
They've been used more, and the collection has been better. They've been coming back with more money than they used to. With this EMS billing company, it seems to be bringing in the revenues pretty well, so the revenues have been increased from what we had been expecting.
And the budget numbers you see there, they do take into account the 10%, theoretical 10% wage increase and then, 5% for next year. So it does take into the 15% that we had talked about.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, there's 2 pages to this. Didn't even turn it over yet.
And yeah, just for clarification, on page 2, you'll see there's 2 sections. One's a potential budget cut reduction section and one's a potential budget addition section. This is more of a, just a brainstorming in case, well, for 2 reasons. One, I'm being completely honest when I say we have looked through every single line item in this budget numerous times and tried to take out anything we possibly could. So if you want us to take it further in terms of what's truly discretionary in there, I'd say discretionary even, I'm not sure how discretionary eliminating it should say health reimbursement account, not retirement account, I don't think, but in terms of areas where you could save some money would be, we do give employees $500 a year or $1,000 if it's a family. And then, and this was part of this was because our health insurance claims are so high, if you were trying to address the health side of it, what could we possibly do to offset some of those costs if they continue to go up? So, like I said, 1 would be the HRA. 2, we could look at doing co-pays, which we've reached out just and asked associates to tell us what could you generate with co-pays. There's been a suggestion about using comp time or allowing comp time for overtime so we wouldn't pay out overtime. And then we talked about maybe eliminating the wage study, using some other sources for that. So these are kind of some things that we could potentially do if you want to, cut the budget more. But truthfully, there's not a whole lot of other things in there. It's pretty bare bones. If we find out that the levy limit's better than we hope, or I should say the best case scenario that is on the far right of your spreadsheet up there, the list I've got there of just some potential budget additions or just some things
Okay.
that we could potentially add back in there if we have more money than we think. And again, these are just for brainstorming discussion purposes, because we are, this budget does include using $150,000 of our risk management fund reserves, just because again the claims are so high. And we do have a sufficient amount of reserves to be able to cover that. But if you don't want to do that, then, you know, then we'd have to find savings elsewhere, or we'll have to use some of the additional levy that we might have to put that reserve money back. And then there's just a couple other items on there. So I don't know if you want to go into detail or not, because I don't want to read every single item unless you want me to. But
Yeah, I think all of us can read. I have a question as far as the brainstorming, which obviously we all appreciate. Do we have any idea as far as like pulse with the staff? I mean, would anybody or everybody either like totally freak out, or B, like I would love to be able to use, you know, comp time instead of taking overtime in cash? I mean, do we have any sense of how receptive any of these people would be, or we had never even gone down that path at all? Like, have we surveyed them, or
I think I
nobody
can
really
speak
knows?
on behalf of DPW that they would like comp time.
But the problem with that, of course, is if they all start taking comp time off, then you don't have your line workers because they're all gone. Yeah.
I think that's why I went away years ago.
Because everybody's like, I got to use my comp time up before the end of the year or whatever.
and you do, you know, I mean, you earn it at time and a half, so then it's like, yeah, you're, like every hour they're working, they're getting 1.5 hours of time off, and so then, yes, you end up having a lot of extra vacation time you're trying to cover, so yeah, I mean, you may not end up actually having savings, but.
Right now, they can't, city employees can't take it at all. They have to take it all in overtime?
Yeah.
Okay. And I know Joel and I have,
Except for the police, because of the union.
I was just gonna say, your CBA, okay. I think the allowing comp time for overtime, I think is worth exploring, air quotes. But I would be very cautious about how much of it could you do. Could you do like 20 hours is the cap, and anything beyond that, you just automatically get paid out? I mean, there's a way that you can manage it. And obviously can you roll it over? Like in some places you can't, you've got to use it by the end of the year. Well, that's great until December 15th when there's nobody here because everybody's got 2 weeks of comp time built off and now they're all gone. Well, we can't run a city without people up front. It just won't happen. Or we can't, respond to a water main break because everybody's on vacation or in the last 2 weeks of December. So I don't know how the rest of the F&J folks feel, but I would think that would be something that's worthy of spending a little bit of time on. I just, I'm not the, with my other hat on, I was part of the committees that did do that, but you have to just be super careful that you pull that thread as far as you're gonna pull it and say, okay, what about, 3 people on EMS, all are out with COVID or all pregnant or whatever your scenario is. Now what about the people that were promised 6 months ago they could have that comp time off? Then what do you do with them? Well, I've already planned my vacation for New Mexico for 2 weeks. Well, I'm going. Well, you were going to go, but now you can't. I think it's worthy of some time. But I would not go into the deep weeds with it. But I'd at least pierce the veil on it and see, what are other people doing? Credit to my former boss, the sheriff, used to always tell me when I got a project, before you go crazy, stop what you're doing. Ask the other 5 counties around you, what do they do for this same situation? And that's a great starting point, for at least for me. And of course, I'm always in favor of eliminating the wage study because I think it's frivolous. I made that pretty clear.
You did, which is why it's
Yeah.
also on there, so.
We've got the expert right here. How bad is it managing that comp time?
Well, I think my comp time is probably a little bit different than what you're talking about, because the comp time that you're suggesting here would most likely be not contractual, meaning it's going to be under the Fair Labor Standards Act. So my people, based on the collective bargaining agreement, let's say they work an additional hour on a shift, they would get that hour and a half. But FLSA rules would say if they didn't work that 80 hours, you wouldn't get it. So I had the luxury of saying, if they ask for a comp day off, no, you're not getting it, because it wasn't FLSA earned comp. If it's truly FLSA earned comp, then you have to allow that person to take off, and you have to fill in with overtime if necessary. So my
Now it's
situation's a
costing you
little
more
bit,
money.
my situation's a little bit different, so I have the luxury of saying, if you ask for a comp day off, you're not necessarily gonna have it.
But on December 15th, 3 people are already gone you would not have the ability to say, no, sorry, 3 people are already gone.
Right, I think what you're referring to is most likely going to be FLSA comp. They'd have to meet it within that 2-week pay period. They'd have to go over the 80 hours and then earn it. So you would be required to give them that time off. Our bank is not year end, so ours is, it just keeps going. You just can't fill more than 5 days worth of time off in it.
Yeah, so it's not clear if we'd actually save anybody by doing it. It was
Right.
just, somebody made a suggestion about it, so.
Right. Another thing that's not on this list, but again, I'm putting my other hat on, I apologize. One thing the county did with mixed results, once a year in June and July, they had a third-party vendor come out and you'd fill out this health questionnaire and you'd have to give your blood. Read it, let me back up. You had the option to give blood. And then they would test it for triglycerides and cholesterols and sleep apnea and whatever. If you did that, in and of itself, you automatically got 10% benefit towards your health insurance. If you didn't want to give blood, you just paid the full amount. But simply go in there and have the guy say, hey, you should eat better, Scott, your BMI is too high, blah, blah, blah. In and of itself, you get that 10% premium. Now, supposedly, in a broader scale, that's going to save you money down the road because you're going to see Ken Meinel's cholesterol is off the charts, and we're going to keep him now in 2023 by giving blood. We're going to tell him and get him on Lipitor, and that's going to lower the risk of him having a heart attack and costing us millions of dollars. I think is what
I'm not in, by the way.
but I mean that was the thinking. And so I know the county does it for all county employees. It's once a year. You fast for 12 hours. You go in. You give your blood. And like I said, worst case scenario, you gave your blood and you got 10% less on your health insurance premiums every month because you gave blood once a year. I don't know if that's something that we would save money with. Would it help us down the road? I have no idea. But the county's been doing it for, 10 or 15 years now. But I know a lot of people that won't do it. I don't want them to know what my health is. I don't want to give blood. And that's totally their choice. But then you just, $1,200 versus, $120 off every month. So I don't know if that's something that would help us or something we should look into. I saw you say implement co-pays.
Well,
maybe you can meet two masters there and say you don't have to make co-pays if you do the blood screening once a year.
Well,
I don't
one thing I wanted to mention too is that in terms of dealing with the health insurance costs, the contract with the PD says that we have to pay 100% of their health care premium. So we're kind of limited at least until the end of 24 to be able to make any adjustments to the premium side. The contract does say you can make adjustments to co-pays, co-insurance, et cetera. So that's why I kind of threw that in there. It's like, well, theoretically we have flexibility on that. So,
Yeah.
but
Okay. Other stuff that you want to hit the highlights on or talk about or introduce or what have you? Or
I'll just throw this out there just because this is going to be a topic / issue going forward and does pertain to the budget. And that just has to do with the zoning side of it. Right now, obviously with Bonnie leaving in T-minus 45 days or so, we've been working with Joe to try and figure out, okay, what's that arrangement going to be? And like right now, at least for the zoning side, we don't pay an hourly rate. They get the zoning fees, they get the administrative zoning fees when people submit permit requests, et cetera. So that's how they're getting paid. We've talked about wanting that the next person would hopefully work more hours, and so Joe said, well, maybe you do an hourly arrangement. I've suggested that as basically maybe being an option. So I don't know what that's going to look like. Joe's still trying to talk to his potential replacement as to what they're willing to do. Joe has talked about, maybe at some point the city takes the zoning side of it in-house. If we're to do that, I told Joe that, that's certainly something we consider, but we'd need a transition plan, and it would need to be something, 6 months, a year. So it's something, you have a transition period, not just let's say 45 days, or just gonna, it's too short, I think, to just do that kind of an overhaul. But, so in terms of budgeting purposes, maybe we'd budget for, half a year of hiring somebody in-house and doing that transition next year. I don't know. Just saying, the number I threw on there is just from a wage study that Lake Geneva did. That doesn't, that was just throwing in a number, really, honestly, for that kind of a position, but, so again, this is just discussion in terms of how we fund that office and what it looks like. I don't quite know at this point.
Yeah, I talked with Adam, and with the project we got on board right now and more coming in, Bonnie just never had enough time. When she come in for 4 hours or 3 hours?
6 hours a week. Yeah.
6 hours a week, all she had time to do was just basically the calls that came in during the week to return those calls, And I think that we've got to look at a way where we can get somebody, at least, whoever it is and what it is, that we get maybe half days out of them, or something like that. I don't know, whatever, you feel is adequate, but there's no way that, you got this big project coming up, and the person's only going to work on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they want to meet on Wednesday. And Bonnie had other obligations, I believe that, she couldn't, it wasn't that she didn't want to come in, but, we're going to have to, I think, entertain some of these projects coming up that, yeah, we'll be there for you. If you want to have a meeting, have them set it up and we've got everybody there. So that's why I think we need more hours. I think it's time.
And Joe's tentatively indicated he's found somebody, which would be, he's tentatively identified Allison, who's actually doing our code enforcement right now, Allison Schwartz, as being that replacement, but there seems to be a little bit of question as to whether, she still kind of wants to do the code enforcement, still wants to do it through a separate company, municipal code enforcement, and I've indicated that, we can't, there's gonna be a conflict of interest if you have your zoning administrator wearing one hat and then also operating a separate company that you'd be making referrals to, and like what duty is she performing and what's she billing for. It needs to be somehow segregated.
Sounds pretty muddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know he was gonna be having, I just talked to Joe about this yesterday, and so he was gonna be talking to Allison more to figure that out, but anyway. We'll
She could probably do both if she was under our house.
Correct, and I
Yeah.
Well, that's where I was
That
going
might
with the
be-
full-time building and zoning administrative position, add 91,000 to it. Right now, she's working 6 hours a week. If we go to full-time, is there truly going to be enough work for a 40-hour-a-week job? Because, if I can get a job where I get paid for 40 hours, but I'm really only putting in 31, where do I sign up?
If we had a double, if she did double, if that worked,
Right.
where she, doing the job she's doing right now.
Or does that person
and
need
then
a,
with the other stuff.
or does that person need at a much cheaper labor rate, an assistant, someone that is there a couple hours a day to return phone calls or push papers or whatever, and in lieu of putting this person in position for a full-time job? I don't know how busy that person is. On one hand, the argument could be made that 6 hours a week is all she needs. I see Ken's point that that's not enough, but we're not also hemorrhaging the other way either. It's like, here's 18 permits that from Joe's construction company that never got filled, I'm pissed. Well, you know what I mean? I don't know that we're ready to make the leap from 6 hours a week to 40 hours a week, plus all the fringes.
The only thing I can say is I'm spending a lot of my time on zoning right now and have been since I started. Just yesterday I was filling out the annexation. We got an annexation questionnaire from the DO, Department of Administration, or I should say the Municipal Boundary Review. Worked on it yesterday, worked on it last week, took quite a bit of time, had to call around, get the information put together. That's really something that should have been done, honestly, by our zoning department, not necessarily me, but I submitted and did it. Obviously, the development agreement with Harvest Point has been delayed since January. Why? Because you didn't have anybody who was really working on it consistently. And as a result, we're still dealing with issues regarding the water connections. Are they, the designs call for them to have, the wide connections, which the water department hates and doesn't want. So it's like, as opposed to having separate laterals, how that got approved, no one can really know. But we now raised the issue, and
If you guys collectively as staff think that there's at least 40 hours a week for this person and then some, then I guess we're gonna have to do it.
I'm just saying, like,
The work is there.
Yeah,
I know
okay.
that Adam has been
Yep.
putting, I'm not gonna say half, but he's been putting a lot of his time
Right.
and effort just into that department.
Right.
To get things sort of rolling and keep them rolling,
And I'm certainly, like, I want to be involved, and particularly on the economic development side, so like, that's not an issue. I'm just saying, there's definitely much more that can be done, and there's definitely a need to put more time into that department. Is it a perfect 40 hours? I can't say if it's perfect 40. I can tell you it's definitely more than 6, and it's probably at least 20 a week, I would say, based upon. The question is, can you find somebody who's gonna really, and the thing too is like right now we've got, we're paying somebody separately for code enforcement. So you throw in a few hours a week for code enforcement issues, I mean,
You're up to, yeah,
you're getting closer.
36 or, somewhere in there.
Are you proposing that we eliminate the code enforcement officer and it gets absorbed by this new $90,000 position?
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm with you.
Yeah.
Now it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It'd be
Okay.
both.
Yeah.
Right.
It'd be both.
Right, okay, then that I can chew on and swallow a lot easier than just simply saying, well, they're going from 6 hours to 40 hours.
Right.
So, okay,
Wouldn't it be offset too by the zoning fees you were talking about that we now Bonnie keeps?
Right.
And that would come to the city
It
now.
would come to the
Any
city.
idea
Now,
what that number is?
it's not very much. It's only been, I think, like 11,000 or something this past year.
Well, it's still 10%.
Yeah, $10,000.
I'm just saying, it's not
It's
not
not
a
gonna
ton.
pay half.
it's not gonna
Yeah.
fund the position.
No,
No,
It's not
for
going to
sure.
fund the position. Now, on the flip side, if we're able to get some of these permits, processed more quickly and, because of the net new construction limit in there too, you gotta take that into consideration where if we can get some of these projects moving a little more timely and people get more motivated to want to do projects, maybe that would help offset some of the costs. So just something to think about.
Yeah, and I'm thinking more of Adam's time too, He's got a lot of other projects that he could be working on.
Yeah.
Not that he, like he said, wouldn't be involved, on a daily basis with this or a couple times a week. But man, right now, it's eating a lot of your time. And you don't mind it because he's.
Right.
Yeah, again, I don't mind it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's tough because I want people to feel like they have a positive experience with our zoning in terms of being able to get stuff done timely. And it's tough when you got developers who are like, the Taco Bell issue, for example, where, that came up just recently about the accesses, how many accesses should they get? That was something that had been pending for almost a year and just got brought up to the developer within the last month or so about, well, you should only have one entrance rather than two. It's these kinds of things that if somebody was doing it more daily, had more time per week to work on it, maybe some of these issues would get resolved sooner.
And we didn't blame, we didn't push the blame on anybody, but yeah, and I'm sure that everybody was wondering, what was going on with Taco Bell. And it basically boiled down to one entrance or two entrances. And to me, that was, we should have sat down right away and worked through that. And it wasn't the city, we didn't drop the ball, or Bruce didn't drop it, it just never got together to solve that.
Are you two collectively okay with them at least looking into the full-time position and eliminating the code enforcement officer?
Yeah, for my time on planning commission, we needed
Yes.
more
Okay.
hours in that position.
Let's go forward with that then, for sure.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
Just so you guys have some marching orders. I don't want you to come out of this meeting and say, well, we talked about a lot of stuff, but we got no direction from F and J.
Yeah, well,
That's not what we're doing.
Meet with Joe and figure, see what we can work out.
Anything else about budget cuts or reductions from you guys? If not, spend a couple minutes here talking about the possible potential budget additions. Restore funds to risk management reserves, cost of $150,000. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, because of, right now, under the budget that we're proposing, and that's under the worst-case scenario for the levy, we're using $150,000 of our existing reserves
Okay.
to help offset the big increase in medical expenses. So we're saying if either A, we do more cut somewhere else and reduce the amount of reserves we're using, or if the levy limit ends up being higher than we think, then we're currently budgeting for, then reduce that down and not use so much reserves. That's what that means.
And we won't have that answer till sometime, hopefully later this week.
Hopefully tomorrow, yeah.
As early as tomorrow,
Yeah.
okay. ClearGov budgeting, we must have took that away.
We did. Right now, we still got money in there for just the CIP portion of it, but we took away the budgeting and personnel management software. So right now, it's just the CIP, so.
We're hoping to add that back in if we can. It would help aid in the whole process of budgeting. It allows the department heads to go in and enter their numbers online and stuff, and then we can imported into our software.
And if memory serves, the ClearGov budgeting is the state's recommendation that gets you closer to alignment with the Government Accountability Board, yes? Or not necessarily?
I don't think so. It is more just a.
Software.
But it's state supported, state encouraged, endorsed, whatever you want to call it?
I don't know. I don't know how to say
I
it.
thought it was. I thought it was, I might be wrong on that, but, so you would like it will help you from a staffing perspective and,
Well, right now, we're just dealing with spreadsheets and formulas, and there's room for error there. Where
Right.
here, you export your information in there, department heads can go in and actually enter what they're requesting, and you either approve it or don't approve it, and then you can upload it right into the software, so there's less of all these different spreadsheets that we're dealing
well,
with.
considering what was our bottom number, or 8 million something, I thought you said? The levy limit was like 7851 for 2023. I think we'd be foolish not to spend $12,000 to get this software put back in. Do you guys disagree with me?
No.
Ken? Okay, so let's go ahead and put that back in for Corey.
Assuming that we. come back with
Right,
our-
assuming everything else, yeah, okay. And we already talked about the full-time building and zoning administration position. And then, of course, we already talked at the last meeting about the market wage adjustments and the structural salary plan adjustment. So again, as depending on how things shake out, we're in favor of that too. So I guess that takes us through the whole preliminary review, at least for this time. Anybody have anything else from the budget or anything on the agenda that you'd like to cover that we skipped over or glossed
I have
over?
a question about the.
Go ahead.
the, Risk management fund reserve. You're taking 150 out of the reserves. Where does that fund stand? And I guess what's that 150,000 represent? Is that 2%?
Half of it, yeah.
Or half of it?
Half of it.
It's at 1.2, wasn't it? We checked.
Yeah, something like
It's
that.
like 1.2 million right now.
Okay.
So a little over 10%.
Yeah. Now, again, it's like we're hopeful, maybe if we are better than we expect for this year, then you won't have to use as much of it, but we just can't say for certain.
I know I guess I used to be involved quite a bit in the library budget, and they have recommendations on how high your reserve should be. Is there something for municipalities? If you have what did you say, Scott, $8 million budget?
The levy was 7.8, or I think, what was the total budget for the
What's
city?
our total budget?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Well, currently it's 7.4,
And so,
7 there.
We're projecting it to be,
But we're hoping it's gonna be,
They have a recommendation about like unassigned fund balance should be usually like 50% of your operating, 50% of your operating costs for the year.
okay.
Well, 50% of your operating budget, or they say 6 months of expenses, they use those as the metrics. So, I mean, we've got, geez,
yeah.
we definitely meet that metric in terms of the amount of reserves we have right now,
Okay.
so.
And we will be having our auditors coming to
Yep.
the meeting, coming.
So next, second meeting in September, which this is obviously the latest that, it's unfortunate. It took the auditor a very, very long time to get the audit done this year for last year, so, but they are gonna come, second meeting in September, so.
okay. Does that answer your question, Ken? I mean, Tim?
Yep.
Ken, you got anything that's
No.
here that you want to address?
I'm good.
I guess the one thing I just wanted to mention too is I just want to give Corey a lot of credit. She's been working super hard, immensely hard on the budget this year. Obviously, it's the first one that Corey's done, and obviously the first one I've done with Elkhorn. So, Corey's been working super hard to make sure that all the GL counts are right and accurate and match what's in our budget, and making sure that we understand every single item that's going in every single line item. And she's put together a lot of really great spreadsheets, as you can tell, which is making really helpful to keep on top of everything and see everything. And just even the spreadsheet she put together, just at the top, that concept, the summary we were just looking at before with the best case scenario and where we're at. I mean, just doing a great job, and really crunching, trying to look at the EMS fire. That's been a challenge. So I just want to say Corey's doing a great job and has been, doing a good job, so.
Great job, Corey.
That's why you got chosen.
Yeah.
Is there anything more that you guys are used to seeing? Because I
No, I
wasn't
think this
involved
is
with
more
it
than
before.
More than,
Is it too much? Is it good? Is it?
Santa give us half a page.
Okay. I just don't want to give you too much information,
That
make it
was
too
from 2 years
confusing
ago.
either.
Would it, for the F and J committee members present, do you think it would be helpful, or do you think it would cause too much angst for the non-F and J council members present today to get this packet? Like, I hate to say, Carol Young, like, here's what we talked about, and just giving it to her. I mean, this was like a foreign language to me an hour ago. Now I understand a lot more. I think to just hand it to them and say, here, just so you guys can kind of keep up with what we've been talking about. I don't know if that's a good idea or a bad idea, but I don't know what the staff has input. Maybe I'm saying it the wrong way. When it comes to my turn at the city council meeting on September 6th to talk about where we're at with budget, all I'm going to say is we talked about a whole bunch of stuff, but it's all in the preliminary phases, and there's a lot of things that are still on the table. But I mean, do you think they would want all this other stuff? I don't know. I'd hate to give it to them, and then you get phone calls, or maybe you want the phone calls. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I think this sheet is probably the most helpful.
The one that just,
Yeah.
in plain English, this 2-pager? Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Right.
Well, this one is easy. I mean, but, bullet points are easy for people to understand, so.
Sorry, Corey, but
Hard working.
No, this makes a lot more sense to me now.
when you're going line by line, it's easy,
Right,
and it's being explained to you, to
Right.
just hand it to them.
yeah, so. I guess maybe what we'll do is leave it as is and just tell them, give them this and say if you have specific questions, then reach out. And, do we want to set up, or unless you guys aren't ready to do this, you and Corey, do we want to go ahead and set up our budget sessions, or are we going to just do that internally through F and J this time around? Because you have two choices. You can just run them through us, and then in November, right before Thanksgiving, you pass it out and everyone signs the thing and we move on. I did not get a lot out of having meetings about the budget. I didn't. You guys may have. I did not. Same thing with the with the department heads. Having Joel come out for 5 or 10 minutes and saying, I need squad car, and here's what the office supplies are, and here's what the new dispatch center is going to cost. Any questions? No. Versus previous admin folks that were giving them up to an hour to talk. I don't need to know how much he's going to spend on staples. I don't care. That's just me. So, what do you guys want to do? I just thought there's been in years past, we had I think there were years we had 6 and 8 of these damn meetings about the budget before we signed off on it. It was just, why?
I guess
So.
my I don't want to say vision, 'cause that's too strong a word. I guess my thought would be that, obviously we're meeting now, and then at the council meeting next Tuesday, we'll hand out the CIP information, with the vehicle replacement schedule, just so the council can look at that. If they have questions about what's on there, they can raise those questions. Then we'll obviously kind of come back with the subsequent council meeting. We'll do the actual full budget, and we'll have a summary sheet like this, probably with something comparable to the bullet points there. If there's specific questions about line items, and then basically from the end of September till the end of November, we'll update the council at those meetings with kind of here's where we're at right now, as our budget, numbers change a little bit as we get more information, and then if you guys if we find out that there's a problem or something, that, we can schedule more committee meetings to talk about it, but, I wasn't necessarily thinking we'd have a ton of committee meetings just for the sake of committee meetings, unless you guys want to, unless there's specific things you want to talk about.
Why don't we get closer to the end, when you get the levy maybe
Yep,
down the road and things are sorted out, maybe have a proposal about the zoning position, because that's a big piece of the puzzle, and we can encourage the other council members to attend if they'd like to.
Yeah.
That's
And
good.
if they
Yeah.
don't, they don't.
Yeah,
If they
do
do,
you care
they do.
to?
I guess what I don't want to do is I don't want to spend time on Tuesday, September 6th, having you guys tell the other 3 people what you just told us tonight. They're not on F and J. They could have come here if they wanted to. They chose not to be here. I mean, it's an open invitation. We all know that. We can go to any committee we want. Maybe send this to them in advance with just look this over. If you bring any questions you have for the budget to the Tuesday meeting.
okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, then you could have, at that the next meeting, any department heads that did have something they wanted to convey to us, that would be their opportunity.
Right.
But not every department head.
Right.
You know,
Right.
in their 10, 15-minute spiel.
Right.
And then there's no questions.
Which is, that's the problem. You know, every department had 10 or 15 minutes, any questions? No, okay, next. Blah, 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 10 or 15 minutes, anything for Matt? No, next. I mean, what was the point? Except making them miss dinner.
Yeah, I mean, my hope would be that all questions from the department directors about their budgets would be resolved, you know, with Corey and me, and then ultimately, you know, I guess with the committee, as opposed to doing presentations to the council that isn't probably the most efficient use of time, so, but,
Yeah.
I have a question. What are you guys looking for?
For me, I'll speak for myself. There's a surprise. Anybody? No, okay. My expectation is Adam supervises the department heads. When Adam says all the department heads have submitted their budgets, Corey and I have looked them over, they're good, that's enough for me. Where do I sign?
Okay.
That's my expectation.
Yeah.
If there was a
I don't
big
need,
issue,
huh?
you know, like if somebody had a real problem with redoing Centralia and wanted to have Matt here to explain that,
Right.
I could see that happening if there was an issue.
Right.
But if there's not an issue like that, then
Right.
we're wasting our time. But I do like these committee meetings because I think we learn a lot more and ask more questions.
Agreed.
They're productive.
Does that work for you guys?
yeah, I mean,
Do whatever you guys
Yep.
want us to do.
All right, so I guess for now, we'll leave it open-ended about when we need to meet again. When you guys, think we're closer and have, like, especially, the thing about the $96,000, full-time position and the letter from the DOA or DOA people, when you get that letter this week, if that does anything that like makes you all go, oh my God, we got to go meet again. If it's a couple, tenth of a percentage point either way and you don't think it's a big deal, we don't have to meet again. You can send us an email. Hey, F and J people, just so you know, it came in at .249. Okay. We thought it would be 248. Okay, well, that's good to know.
yeah, we'll definitely let you know.
Or something like that.
Once we get it.
But to your point, Lacey, I would definitely send this to the rest of the council, just saying, see both sides of this. Obviously, you'll scan it anyway, but, if you have questions about anything, be prepared to bring them to the meeting on Tuesday, because we're just going to do an overview. And for future reference, you're always welcome to come to an F and J meeting if you want to, deep dive into the budget, which I don't think many people do. Just, it's just not worth it. All right. Anything else before we make a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Stand adjourned. Thanks, guys.